presented here for your consideration the notion that the ordinary people surrounding you every day, on the street, the bus, at the post office, or the trendy evening venue, are, in fact, far from ordinary. That these men, women, and others form their own splinter groups behind closed doors, and that these micro-societies engage in activities often more obscure than fiction. Welcome to the Sub-Subculture.
Hello and welcome to the Sub-Subculture Podcast. I am your host and the proverbial dead fly in the fruitcake, Andrew.
And I'm Joe, Emperor Julius Caesar's least favourite concubine.
Maybe he liked a beard rubbing up against his undercarriage.
Not many do, but
I don't know what position you'd have to be in to Julius Caesar to be rubbing his undercarriage with your bearded chin.
None of them are good.
Let's leave that to everyone else's imagination.
Welcome, listeners.
33 seconds in and already alienated the prudish crowd. Good. Be gone with you. So, today
We are talking
about
LARPing.
LARPing. I struggle with saying it because it has that pronunciation of the letter R, which comes out like that when I say it, R, because my accent's a walking tour of various continents. And I think that's the last remnant of my American accent from when I was a child, when that particular R comes out. LARPing, can't help it.
Which stands for Live Action Role Playing.
It does. That's exactly what it stands for. So LARP, besmirched as a grooming ground for pedos, but maybe just a bit of fun for the costumed, outdoor-capable nerd amongst us.
I can't believe you're starting in on the pedo hunting already.
I am taking the most controversial elements and putting that into a juicy hook.
I didn't come across anything pedo-related in my research.
Oh, really? I've got a whole video. Well, no, it's a whole video, but a guy that, calls it out.
All right, strap in, people. The pedo finder general is on the loose.
So, live action role play. Do you want to start with some preconceptions? Are you close to or far away from this topic, your personal life?
I am a mid-distance from this. So I've played Dungeons & Dragons for many years, since I was a teenager, and that's pretty related. That's a role-playing game, except that takes place around a table, and you're just wearing your regular clothes without giving too much away about what LARPing is. That is definitely in the same wheelhouse. And when I was a student, I saw a bunch of nerds dressed in black hitting each other on the field with foam swords.
Okay.
And I kind of figured out, this must be what they call LARPing. And my housemate at the time explained that he'd done a bit of LARPing. And yes, it was lame, but it was super fun. And it was basically in the evenings an excuse to drink and camp and sit around a fire. And he had such a good time last time he went that he accidentally dropped his phone into a bucket of his own vomit, and that killed that phone. So that was my impression of LARPing.
Wow. That's probably a quite hardcore version of people doing LARP, from what I can gather.
Was it hardcore, or was he 17 and drinking Grant's whiskey with Cherry Tango for the first time?
Well, yeah. Okay. You probably don't need a lot of that to produce a bucket of vomit.
No, you can skip the Cherry Tango, to be honest. Just Grant's is enough to make you hurl.
It's no Glen's vodka, I'll tell you that. It's the cheapest brand of vodka you could buy in Scotland at some point, and it was actually just called Glen's vodka.
In my first year of university, I bought some, before I was wise to the ways of the world, I bought some vodkat from Iceland for cheap and tried to make strawberry vodka with it because my dear friend Andy, which is you, had made cherry vodka, I think.
Yes.
And it was bloody good. And I thought, right, I want to emulate this. So I'm going to get the cheapest, shittest version of vodka I can. I don't know what it was. It was called itself Vodkat, probably for legal reasons.
Made from real cats.
Yeah. Made from turpentine and cats. And it was fucking horrible. I've made a lot of bad alcohol in my time, but the strawberry vodka was undrinkable. It was foul.
Yeah.
Poured most of it away.
I don't think the strawberry has the structural integrity to stand up to soaking in alcohol for a long period of time.
Or methanol. Or propanol, or whatever that was.
Yeah. Lighter fluid.
So what were your preconceptions of LARPing?
I knew what it stood for, and my guess was it was people dressed up in costumes having a big game of make-believe together, largely influenced by pop culture references like the movie Role Models, where there's a geeky boy in it who is really into LARPing. I thought it was probably something we'd consider largely laughable, but because it's seen as childish to be playing make-believe and wizards and running around with foam swords, But on the outset, I thought it seemed fairly harmless, maybe fairly wholesome, but it's definitely something that would be looked upon as very geeky, I think. Someone mentions it later on. There's a famous viral YouTube clip of grown men running around a forest, chucking tennis balls at each other, screaming, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. So it was all of that kind of crowd, I think, was how it rolled together in my mind.
The cringe factor is significant. You need balls of steel or total social unawareness to do this in public.
Or just the ability to drop your guard and say, fuck it, I don't really care what people think. I'm just going to have fun with it, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I agree. And I say it's cringe. That's how it's viewed by broader society, I think. Because it's hard to interpret on the surface. And it is adults in costumes doing make-believe sword fighting. And it is seemingly pretty childish.
This is from someone, I think, who was on the periphery of it, like yourself, had played Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I've got a salon.com article open in my browser now, which calls it, same guy, the obsessive delusional side of fantasy role-playing from Dungeons and Dragons to live action role-playing.
Whoa.
And
some big words.
He referred to it as the actual freaks that make the rest of us look like freaks.
Wow.
That's nice.
The actual freaks that make the rest of us look like freaks.
As in the rest of us being D&D players.
Oh, right. So these guys, he's saying LARPers are the actual freaks that make everyone else in the space look bad.
Yes. So this is putting them on like a geek social hierarchy. You've got people that play Dungeons and Dragons now making a bit of resurgence, not as terribly geeky as it was once thought to be, maybe, or one more widely accepted, certainly. And LARPers, I guess, on the social pecking order are sitting below those guys. The D&D players look down on LARPers, apparently.
You know, there's something seriously wrong in your social hierarchy when Dungeons and Dragons sits at the top of it.
When the Dungeons and Dragon player looks down on you.
And I say that as a D&D fan. Yeah. This is very true. If you'd asked me about this 10 years ago, I would have said as a D&D player, LARPing is one step too far. I can't do it.
That's more or less Did you write this article, in fact, from 2013? Maybe.
Could be one of my many aliases, which I use to boost Reddit engagement. What?
Pongo Waffle Hammer. I'm on to you.
Oh, shit. Was it that obvious?
Anyway, let's get an extra definition because we've talked around it. We've cruelly mocked it for 5 minutes already. Poor LARPers. That sets the tone. No, well, maybe it doesn't. But live action roleplay, it's a form of gameplay where participants physically portray characters in a fictional setting. This definition comes to us from techtarget.com from May 2025. It combines elements of improv acting, cosplay, and tabletop roleplay games, emphasizes in-person interaction, creative storytelling, and often physical action. Typically, the participants wear costumes, use props, and interact in a physical space to create immersive experiences.
It typically takes place in a field of some kind, and there are these kind of medieval battles of the grand attractions, and there's also sub-skirmishes, and there's narrative-based events and talking and alliance building and all this kind of stuff.
There's definitely elements of that. So there's a lot of different flavors of live action roleplay. The article actually says there can be anything according to the group, and the common ones are things like high fantasy, i.e. your wizards and knights and dragons, historical reenactment as well, though, where they try and be a bit more accurate with the costumes and the weapons, and that is, let's all get together in a field and bash each other in a battle reenactment.
Who wants to play as the Gestapo?
The Gestapo versus King Arthur's knights.
Yeah, it's I suppose Nazi Germany is not really a fantasy setting, is it?
Well, it comes up. So there's also post-apocalypse survival, cyberpunk, sci-fi, horror, and gothic, all LARP-ready topics. All LARPable.
Games. But the down the line straight shooting LARP would be medieval fantasy, knights, dragons, elves.
Your traditional LARP.
If there is such a thing, yes. So what was this guy's problem with it then?
So generally the perception at the outset that, this is exactly that, is cringeworthy to watch, or from the outset of grown men and women in costumes taking it very seriously, throwing beanbags at each other that are supposed to represent fireball spells or some shit.
It's not for watching, though.
Well, if you stumble across it, you're probably not going to look away.
Yeah, that's true. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash when I saw it outside my student house. In private, crack on.
There's something also called Nordic LARP, which has minimal rules but with emotional immersion and heavy emphasis on storytelling rather than winning. And I'll maybe talk about them in a bit, but the Scandies, the Nordics, they go fucking hardcore on this stuff.
They go ham.
What's that? I like ham.
A phrase, going ham.
Yeah.
Going hard as a motherfucker.
Okay.
Going ham on that D.
There we go. Learn something new today.
I love that phrase. But yeah, apparently that style of LARP attracts more female participants than the other styles. It's about 70-30 in most styles. 70% men, 30% women-ish. So it's not a space devoid of women by any means. There's plenty of women that are interested in this stuff.
Yeah, probably the perception or your guesswork at the start would be this is going to be a total sausage fest of nerds.
That would have been my impression, yeah.
I've got badreputation.org.uk open here, which is a feminist pop culture adventure.
That's fun.
And this article from 2011 by a guest blogger was written by a dude, and it's talking
Pongo
about...
butthole smasher.
Ladybug Bottom Out.
Oh yeah, that one. One of my other ones.
Basically, the whole thing is about a vampire LARP. This is from someone who's been LARPing for about 11 years. It's a guy and talks a lot about misogyny and stuff in the LARPing space, gender roles, casual sexism, and how some of the men there laugh it off as laddish jokes and behavior, but it's all kind of toxic. But again, this is quite some time ago, and it's going to depend group to group, story to story, and
nerd to nerd.
Nerd to nerd, yeah. Nerd to mouth.
Oh. So other examples of this misogyny? Should we explore that now?
I don't have a great deal about it. Some of the stuff that he reckoned he was hearing, standing around with a group of guys or late teens, and it says, 6 teenage girls in ball gowns walked past us. They were pretty smiley and seemed to be having a laugh in the sunshine. So other person, oh, look at them. Don't they look all blessed and nice? Me, oh yeah. Other person, fair play though. As soon as they hit the stroke of 16, they're going to get the living fuck raped out of them. Me, what the fuck?
Whoa.
Yeah, that's not nice.
No, that's messed up. That guy needs to go to juvie or something.
I think it's maybe part of the social... What am I trying to say? People that LARP might not have the best social skills.
And there might even be some incel crossover.
That's possible. If we think of this as a largely geeky, often the space of men, I think that there's probably, like anything, there's going to be small pockets of bad apples to ruin the bunch.
And I think being socially abnormal, or maybe not as socially skilled, is not an accident. I think LARPing feeds part of that because there's explicit rules. And competence is more easily attainable, and it's easier to be someone significant and operate in this world. And I think that attracts people where social rules are obscure, sometimes accidentally broken without knowing. Success and status is hard to come by. You can't just say, I'm a powerful mage.
No, in LARP, that's exactly what you can do.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. In LARPing, that's exactly what it offers.
I'm a powerful mage.
Yeah, and it's a simplification of life. And I think that's one of the reasons it appeals.
It is. So basically, at its core, you are acting out something like a video game with your real body rather than a virtual avatar. And not unlike furries that we looked at in episode 3, this is a form of escapism. It's structured, it's themed around a game or an experience in a large number of these groups, but they are still kind of portraying a character. And that means that you're kind of putting on a mask, and you feel like it's easier to say and do things that you wouldn't normally. Now, the good side of that is maybe that helps someone who is socially abnormal, socially awkward to come out of their shell because they are playing someone else and they can feel more comfortable in their character than they would on the street as Jimmy Snots-a-Lot. However, the darker side of that, you've got kind of this dark tourism that a few articles speak about as well, where people either behave in inappropriate ways because they are making a disconnect between, oh, that's what my character said, it's not I would say, or in some extreme cases, they are going along to LARPs of certain themes or to play a villain almost because they feel like they can get away with socially inappropriate taboo behavior.
That's interesting. I definitely think there's an appeal in playing characters that don't represent really who you are. for instance, my D&D character is a cowardly, money-grabbing, leathery old asshole, and those aren't features that I lean into in my real life. I try to not be cowardly or obsessed with money or steal from my friends, and it's fun to try on a different identity or a different practice or something like that, and just for the flavor of it, which is quite interesting, to be that person, to try and get an insight into how it might feel to be someone else. It's fun.
I mean, as another covert, undercover Scotsman, at least partly, you must feel like a penny pincher in your real life, surely. You must have to fight that urge every day. It's just exploring your true nature. Yeah, I like the one, like, he's so cheap that if he dropped a penny, it would hit him on the back of the head.
He's so cheap, he wouldn't give you the steam off his piss.
Not heard that before. Might keep that for later.
Yeah, I do have a sort of Presbyterian frugality, which is hard to overcome, but I don't steal from my friends. Something that was interesting, because I thought, is this just basically furries, but with a different aesthetic? And it's related, but it is definitely different. And the biggest difference is in LARPing, the identity you play is temporary. And whilst people might use it to express parts of themselves, it can also be, just as I said, trying on a different thing just for the experience of it. And then at the end of the day, you put it down again and it goes away, goes back in the box, or never to be used again. But furries, it's more of a persistent identity, because they create these personas which can last for years or decades, which are consistent. And it's more of a true expression, trying to be true, an expression of themselves or some aspect of them that they want to include in this identity. So I think it's different in those ways. It's different in other ways too, but that's a sort of fairly profound difference.
Mm-hmm. LARPs can come in many shapes and forms, not just thematically, but for how the events are run. And I think that if you were big into it, you could have a different character or a different class or whatever for each game that you go to. Some of them are like, let's put it in D&D terms, some of them are one-shots anyway. So it will be a campaign or a long weekend or something where people will camp out and will be in the LARP for the whole time. But then that's done. That story is over, or the series of quests that were available to you for that time don't exist anymore. So it's not really something you can go and revisit with the same character. Sometimes you have to, you have to be coming up with a new thing each time. Or if you're doing a gothic horror one weekend and, 6 months down the line, you're doing Knights and Dragons, you're going to be a bit out of place. So I think
it's going to have to be someone else.
Yeah, it's more improvised acting and taking part in a form of entertainment rather than an expression of you as a character. I think you're right there.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's also becoming more widely recognized for its therapeutic benefits in helping people with like anxiety and social problems build confidence through safe, imaginative interaction. So they can put on this...
Through showing them that it could be a lot worse. Just look at that guy.
Yeah, they just use them like sock puppets. Like, don't worry, you're not a LARPer. Yeah. But I mean, if you can physically put on a suit of armor, maybe you do feel a lot more confident in that moment, and it helps you kind of carry some of that through into the real world later on.
Maybe it does. Acting as a confident person isn't really much different from being confident. At least from the outside, it has the same benefits.
Hot take.
But yeah, it looks like fun swinging foam swords at people. I saw this brilliant clip of a lady elf archer who was stalking through the battlefield, and she fired an arrow from the hip. It's like a big foam.
Hits a guy in the face, right? As he's knelt down behind a shield.
Yeah, clocks him right between the eyes and knocks off his medieval sunglasses.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant kill shot. And that looks great. Great fun. I'd have a warhammer. That would be my weapon of choice.
Would you?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be a wizard, a spellcasty person, a fighter, an archer, a philanderer. Hang up, wait.
You can be one of those. But you'd have a warhammer. Interesting. Interesting. I've often heard penises referred to as hammers. Like someone said they're going to drop the hammer, or he was running around with his hammer out. It's funny how you went straight to that.
The hammer is my penis. Yeah, we get it.
Yep. I'm saying that you want to hold your willy a lot. Have I made that clear? The hammer would be your penis.
You've made that fairly clear.
I think I can get a few more sentences out of it.
Abundantly clear, thank you. What would you be?
The dog.
The dog.
Is that a character in the LARP?
Is it a class? Dog.
Yeah.
Specialism? None. I don't know. If you want to role play as a dog for 6 days, that's your call. That's a rough...
I don't have to wash my furry costume then. I can just use the same one. I'm going to have my key attack will be urine of justice.
Urine of justice.
Just go around the battlefield peeing on people.
You have to shout it out so people know what you're doing.
Of course. It would sound like Matt Berry. Urine of justice!
I can see it now. Oh my God, a talking dog.
My poor neighbours. Constantly screaming shit like that.
Run it through with a halberd. It's unnatural.
But apparently there should be plenty of opportunities for me to try this on, were I so inclined, or rather if I had the free time. Because an article from Radio Prague International from April last year says that LARP has a vivid niche in the Czech Republic because of our abundance of castles, forests, and centuries-old villages, which make an immersive backdrop.
You have quite a few Renaissance fairs as well, don't you?
No idea. I'd have to leave the house for that.
Okay. That would involve leaving your rock.
Coming down from my ivory tower of pizza boxes.
Slithering out from the gaps between the rock and the ground. Like a lizard.
See what my friend tells me, people. That's my oldest friend in the world, and that's what he says.
Yeah, I'm someone that likes you.
You're rock, you serpent.
You're a cold-blooded lizard.
Czech LARP is known for its craftsmanship as well, apparently. World building and camaraderie. But there was an interesting article because it did talk about some of the different types. And apparently one of the bigger ones over here is Battle LARP, which is exactly what you described and exactly what you would think it would be. So it's mostly people that are interested in a kind of more historical reenactment setting. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys they interviewed said that it's pretty serious, actually, and they have to do some proper training for these battles because they're wearing like proper mail and plate, and it's quite an intense experience to be walking around with 30 kilos of armor on you. He said
tiring, I imagine.
People are pretty judgmental. They think it's just fun for nerds, but it's not easy to fight all day in armor, which I believe is probably true.
Probably true. It's also worth mentioning that this is meant to be safe. The weapons are foam and blunt, so they can't blind you or actually stab you. And it's not the same as those medieval UFC fights where they are wearing actual armor and hitting each other with actual weapons, trying to knock them down or do damage.
You say that, but they did talk about some of these LARP events being real steel, as they call it. So they are using metal weapons.
Okay, so there is a crossover.
But they are dulled, so they're not sharp edges. But yeah, apparently people get bruised, obviously, teeth knocked out, and arms broken.
Yay.
Yeah.
And they all left happily.
Well, they probably did, because
that's what they signed up for.
You're completely immersed in an event that you could otherwise only have imagined or drawn or viciously masturbated to. You know, it's something that's never going to happen in your life. You know.
I always wondered what it would be like to be cut down in a muddy field in France.
But I guess the more widespread ones with the padded foam swords and stuff.
That is the more normal one.
Yeah. The ones that have rules about where you're allowed to hit someone as well and stuff like that. They're called boffers. That's quite cute.
That's a boffer. And it runs on an honor system, basically, of people counting how many times they've been hit. And once they've lost their hit points, they, quote, die, and then can go and be revivified somewhere and brought back to life, and they can re-enter the battle. And the whole thing kind of fails if people don't stick to the system, stick to the honor. So it's sort of socially and culturally enforced. But ultimately, if you want to cheat, then you're kind of ruining it, but no one can really stop you. You can just won't be invited to join stuff.
I did wonder, one of the things I wrote down as a question was, are there any common or typical rules in LARP? And it seems like if you're in a group that organize, or like a network that organizes multiple games, I think that's probably more common in bigger countries like the US or Australia apparently as well. But there's some things that are kind of more normal in these ones with boffers, that it's hits from the legs up to the torso, nothing in the groin, nothing in the face, that kind of stuff.
Unless it's an arrow between the eyes, apparently.
I think that was probably frowned upon.
But it was so sweet.
This Salon article, LARP battle rules can get quite complex, but at Otherworld, they keep things simple. So Otherworld is a weekend-long retreat type LARP that they set off. Each one of them's individual and different, and this is where the writer of that somewhat dismissive-sounding article went for their first LARP experience. Each character gets a set number of free hits, basically your hit points, and each time you get touched with a sword, you lose one of those. When you're down to 0, A hit on a limb means that you stop using that limb. A hit on the torso knocks you unconscious. And when that happens, you fall down and quietly count to 50. If no one comes to your aid before then, you're dead. Something like that. But it will vary per group, per game. Mm-hmm. And some of them won't have a system like that if they're more aiming for a psychological or an experience-based LARP.
A story-based one, a narrative or emotional experience. Yep. I think the best ones probably blend it.
One of these Czech ones was talking about a very elaborate style story LARP, which they arranged in their headquarters, which is in an abandoned military hospital. So cool. I think we've got some funky-ass buildings like that around.
That's
He
cool.
said it's a 3-day-long post-war era event set in the rehab of problematic youths in post-war Czech Republic in a psychological institution.
Sounds awesome.
So yeah, if you like the idea of murder mysteries taken to the next level, where you dress up and have dinner, like a murder mystery dinner party, maybe you could go like an extra step in LARPing.
I'm definitely interested. I'm definitely LARPing curious. It's not expensive. Drachenfest is this 6-day one, and as of 3 years ago, it was around 180 euros for all 6 days, which is insanely good value.
Isn't that just your entry? That they're not going to provide a tent and food and everything for you?
Yeah, it's basically entry and camping. But I think for the organisation of the whole thing, for 6 days, that's really good. That's affordable and accessible.
I guess it's a bit of a snowball, though. That's how much you'll pay to get into the event and have somewhere that you can put your tent. Mm-hmm. That's the starting point. But you're going to look like a twat if you show up in jeans and a t-shirt with a sword made out of tinfoil.
And some dirty Y-fronts.
No, that adds the authenticity if you get points for that. Especially if they're like Y-fronts of repellents, so they actually shield you from attacks. Because no one wants to come near you.
And social contact, yeah.
Yeah. But then you've got to make your costume nicely, and people will spend quite a lot of money on those. I'm led to believe. Part of it is the cosplay, so you want more elaborate costumes. Maybe you need to provide your own weapons, so that means padded specific things to do. 6-day event, you're going to need a lot of food and stuff there. So
half of the hobby / subculture is in the building and the stuff that takes place outside of the events. I think that's a whole side to it, which is kind of different skills, craftsmanship and attention to detail and all that kind of stuff. And then in the actual live LARP scenario, as you said, it's improvised acting and narrative building and social relationships, as well as a physical side of hitting things and developing skill in the battlefield.
Yeah, I think some groups that would meet regularly will do trainings. Like the first 3 weeks of the month will be training, like boffer fight training, and then the 4th week of the month will be the battle that you've all been leading up to, or something like that. It is a hobby like anything else. It's quite interesting, boffer combat. But I mean, I can understand also why people would think, why would anyone do that? Because when we practiced martial arts in our wayward youths, one of the quote unquote cool kids that I was in school with, he saw me waiting in the gym beforehand. Oh, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm waiting to go into a kung fu class. That's teenage me. Was it on brand? You can tell.
Yeah, that was hauntingly accurate. You really got the uncertain stammering down.
His response was, "Oh, what you do that for?"
So then you gave him a Vulcan nerve pinch and judo chopped his knee off.
Just cried and pissed myself. But it was unfathomable to him that you would want to go and do something like that. Maybe later on, maybe boxing becomes cool to him or something like that, but he couldn't wrap his head around it. He was baffled.
I get the sense he was probably baffled by a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he wasn't the sharpest tool. Tool though he was.
Yeah. One thing I was wondering about is, given that there's various rules, how do you actually be good at this? Can you be bad at this? Is there a skill to learn? Did you come across any of this?
Yes, I came across a few instances of it. More or less, it was people complaining about LARP groups being cliquey, and if you turn up, like some of them are not very welcoming to newcomers, or here's how to spot a good LARP group and a bad LARP group, because they don't explain the rules properly, and people don't let you into the cool kids, the inner circle of cool kids
Yes,
in LARP.
The local minimum of cool people.
Yeah. So there was all this kind of stuff. There was also a complete loser. Can I call him out by his name? He has it on his YouTube channel. It's fine.
Public domain.
Nicholas Schmidt, who was whinging about trying to be in LARP groups for 3 years and how no one would let him be the character that he wanted to be.
Let me guess. Was this character super overpowered and it was special and it didn't apply? didn't fit into any of the archetypes they'd all agreed on, and he wanted special treatment to be the best.
He literally whinged that he wanted to be the executioner and no one wanted to let him be the executioner. I didn't get much further.
I don't know what that means.
No, like the guy that comes along and chops the heads off. Like, he just wanted to role play as an executioner.
That's fun. There's really not much role play there. They normally don't say anything.
But he whined about people not giving him a lift home as well. Like, these people didn't want me to get in their car.
Wow, he sounds quite repellent, if that's how. Rejected by multiple LARPing groups because you've fixated on this one idea that you want to execute people. That's kind of messed up.
A slightly more sensible, well, no, a much more sensible, it was a very sensible chap, on LARP Mix. He says that LARP is basically plagued by society. Anything that you can find wrong or, out of order in a society will be in a LARP group because it relies on people. It doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Because one of the appeals is the escapism and the fantasy away from modern life. And this guy's saying, actually, it runs foul of all of the same shit.
Yep, that's where I got some of the dark sides of it from as well. But yeah, it's this kind of, is any hobby, I'm sure it is, that there's going to be an element of sort of gatekeeping and elitism about people that take it super seriously and do want to be exclusionists. So,
and there's people that are interested in role-playing the story and the narrative and don't mind losing as long as it makes thematic sense or is emotionally satisfying. And there's also people that play it to win it who are kind of like rules lawyering the whole time. But, you can't do that. I've did this. You've done that. And it's a weird world where the rules have to be acknowledged to some degree, but the more explicitly the rules are talked about and acknowledged, the more difficult it is to be immersed in the fantasy. But you can't have it totally without rules because that is chaos and people can't play well like that.
It sounds like in a well-run LARP group that is inclusive and lets people in and wants newcomers, or especially if it's one that's an event where you're going to get a percentage of people that haven't done this before but are LARP curious, like your good self, then it's still people interacting with other people and it does rely on respecting the rules of a game. What I found was quite nice is that there's kind of this common theme for it to be understood that someone can get out of a scenario, even in like a deep story immersion LARP. When someone wants out, there's usually a way to get out with no questions asked. You single hand up, looking at the ground, covering your eyes kind of thing is commonly understood to mean that someone is having a bad time. There's something in this that they need to walk away from. The game stops. They can walk away with no questions asked.
Sorry, they've got to go and vomit into a bucket.
They've got to go and get the Grants and Cherry Tango out of their system. So it's quite common for people to be able to say cut or hold, as in, stop the scenario.
I've just got railed in the face with an arrow for the 5th time and I'm fucking not having it anymore. And
some of these games that are strictly story-driven, no combat and no touching, that's also quite good. If you don't want to be hit with a foam plastic sword, you don't have to be in LARP.
When I was looking at where the skill lies, if there is any, I found there's an interesting inversion. So if I say that the main skills are physical combat skill, your character's stats, your social influence, and kind of system knowledge, in what way would you rank those from most important, i.e. has most impact on your skill, and which would be least important?
I would put your actual physical ability and maybe how good you would be with a sword if you practiced in your bedroom alone, probably near the bottom. I think it's going to be knowing the rules and your character's stats would be more up there.
Interesting. So in this ranking, it actually ranks social influence as the number one skill for good LARPing. I guess that's leaning more into the non-combat stuff, the more narrative stuff, but it's about influencing people in groups and making decisions and leading people, I guess. So just like in the real world, social influence is subtle but powerful. Then it reckons system knowledge, then physical combat skill, and then finally your character's stats, how strong they are and stuff like that, what spells they've got.
That sounds quite good for newcomers then, because it doesn't rely on you being maxed out and some level 99 paladin's going to come along and
crump you.
Yep.
I imagine that the characters all start at the same level at the beginning of the weekend, rather than start at different power levels.
Probably.
I mean, this kind of suck.
We're kind of trying to roll together a lot of big things and cover an umbrella topic here, because there are going to be smaller, more nuanced games that are more rule heavy. Some are just there for a few hours to fucking thump each other.
And then get pitched up in field.
Yep.
Yeah, pass Grants. Cherry Tango.
Pass Cherry Tango.
Oh, that's foul. That's rancid, that is.
Pass bucket.
Pass bucket.
Yeah. Yep. So it's a multitude of sins covered by the phrase LARP.
There's niche within niche, infinitely nested subcultures, I'm sure.
I didn't do this earlier on. Naughty. I didn't stick to the formula. I'm sorry, but I have a tiny bit of LARP history for you if you want.
I do want.
I knew you want. You always want.
I need it like a padded arrow between the eyes.
From what I could tell in a couple of different places, the very first LARP may have been Dagorir, pronouncing that terribly, which was a medieval...
Sorry, mate, I'm not into Pokemon.
A medieval battle first organized in Maryland in the US in 1977 by a Tolkien fan named Brian Weiss. So him and his friends from college had been talking about Lord of the Rings books and how cool that would be. So alongside influences like Sean Connery's film Robin and Marion, he placed an ad on a local radio station soliciting anyone who wanted to fight in Hobbit wars with padded weapons.
Awesome. What a visionary.
Freewheeling 70s.
Clearly a much better time.
Any groovy guys and cats want to come to the field and hit each other with sticks with me?
Me, please.
Turns out, yes.
And where did it progress from there? Because Dungeons and Dragons came around this sort of time.
That's for your indoors nerd. This is for your slightly more outdoorsy nerd.
The outdoorsman.
I think that, things like fun displays at Ren fairs, which were also growing in popularity, were noted as an influence as well. Yeah, just small groups getting together, having a little fake fight. Why not? I think Gary Gygax invented Dungeons and Dragons or formalized the rules for Dungeons and Dragons in the early 80s. Joe's knowledge is buffering.
So, first edition Dungeons and Dragons was a boxed set that was launched in 1974.
Oh, I lost.
So, something was going on in the culture at this time that people were becoming interested in fantasy roleplay.
Yeah, shit like Lords of the Rings was being published.
It was written starting in 37, but it wasn't published until the 50s. So, maybe kids that grew up on Lord of the Rings, maybe around in their 20s and 70s, maybe that's where it had got into the zeitgeist.
We're speculating here. We're getting onto shaky ground.
We're speculating hard.
We're on a sugly peg.
I'm sure Lord of the Rings has something to do with... It's had such a large cultural influence. I'm sure it has something to do with the rise of D&D and role-playing stuff.
I just told you it did. I just told you the thing. He said, "Do you want to come and fight in Hobbit Wars?" It's right there. It's in his radio broadcast.
Yeah. I meant more generally, but yeah. No, you've proved it.
Good. I'll just simmer back down again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to hear some of the more hilariously controversial, the funnier parts of the research I came across that were quote-unquote dark side, but not really?
Hit me.
I found a hilarious article on the FBI's own website.
Let me guess, they're a domestic terrorist group.
More or less. Yeah. From April 2023, this is from an LEB, which is a law enforcement bulletin. I might have the whole URL here. leb.fbi.gov/ whatever this was called. But yeah, this is where they publish guidance for law enforcement officers, and this one was around LARPing.
This is going to fucking depress me.
It was titled LARPing and Violent Extremism.
Oh, come on.
The FBI want to police your Hobbit fantasies.
Oh, really? Is there any sort of basis for this? It's just another group that they want to be able to arrest under terrorism charges if they need to.
Okay, I'll try and do a voice in a second, but they're basically drawing similarities between LARP groups and extremists who might use this as a cover or legal defense if you raid their cell, their terrorist cell. But nope, not planning a bombing, just LARPing, guys, just LARPing.
Yeah, it would be the first domestic terror attack carried out with swords.
Probably, sadly not.
Okay, let me rephrase that. It would be a hell of an unusual weapon choice, given it's actually easier to get a gun than a sword in America.
Part of their rationale for this was that in October 2020, Caleb Franks was arrested for plotting to kidnap the governor of Michigan. And when he was arrested, he claimed that it was all a LARP.
Wow.
He later pled guilty.
Oh, great defense. He probably single-handedly got LARPing on the FBI list.
Yeah, it was a good little guide, though, on how to spot extremists versus LARPers, where they had a little table, like one's on one side and one's on the other.
Come on!
It's so good. Like, LARPers like an audience, whereas extremists would enjoy secrecy, or not enjoy secrecy, require secrecy. And LARPs have rules and definitions of the game, and extremists have a fear of law enforcement in real life and use live weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
if you're showing up with your Uzi to the LARP, you're in the wrong place. Everyone knows that.
Honestly, you could take one look at a group of LARPers and know that none of them, like this, it's impossible. It couldn't possibly be extremists. One look, and if you're in doubt, a conversation, no, that's absurd.
When he starts telling you about his staff of seeing, you know,
Exactly.
you're okay. Let me try this. Okay. In the modern era, as extreme beliefs, e.g. anti-government and anti-law enforcement movements and socialist unrest have become increasingly widespread, some groups of like-minded individuals have organized into formalized self-styled militias and informal clubs. Meetings may entail impassioned rhetoric and rehearsal of tactical operations for the ultimate future apocalypse when citizens will overtake the government or institute their own community policing. Some individuals conspire to commit real-world violence to advance their ideological goals rather than roleplay.
That's on the actual FBI website.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's a line-for-line quote from this law enforcement bulletin.
Overthrow the government. They're actually saying that stuff out loud. It's madness. Militias, self-styled militias. I think I think hot take. It's because it's probably a largely liberal crowd and it's not a liberal administration at the moment, and it's a way to give them the hammer if they need it. By hammer, I mean punishment, not penis.
That would have still been published in the Biden administration, 2023.
Is it? Okay. Well, in that case, God knows what that's coming from then.
I mean, but regimes, 4-year regimes come and go, but the bureaucrats behind it in the FBI, they don't. The other one, this is, so I guess, edging towards the darker side of LARPing is this concept of bleed. Did you come across bleed at all?
Bleed, no.
Okay, so the talk of bleed is where exhaustion and psychological fatigue or kind of stress and impact from your LARP start to bleed into your real life. So where you've taken a fictional setting or event and it starts to affect you outside of the game.
Example?
It's actually backed up by some research from the University of Sydney and Monash, according to a June 2022 article as well.
I don't want peer-reviewed research and carefully weighted statistical conclusions. I want emotional, single examples.
Okay, I have some of those as well. But they're saying that most participants experience this in some form or other, even if it's because they kind of, even in a positive way, they're chasing the feeling that they had in LARP when they were someone else, or they were some powerful wizard, or they were stoic warrior or something like that. So it might be from consuming more LARP content online, which would still be, they would see that kind of as a form of bleed. It starts to affect how you are interacting with media. So, you know, wearing a little piece of your costume to remind you, a bit like if you still had your wristband on from a festival. In theory, that might be bleed. And where we come back to our friends in the Nordic LARPing scene, where I said that they take it really seriously, there's some hot stats on the Nordic guys.
Stat me up.
LARP is Denmark's third most popular organized event behind football and handball.
Wow. Really?
Claims a 2012 article from roadsandkingdoms.com.
That's massive.
These guys in Nordic LARP, they're going for maximum immersion and storytelling, and they're also going for maximum psychological damage and bleed in some of them.
Like when that actor was playing Idi Amin, the notorious dictator, and then came home and was still Idi Amin to his wife. I was like, oh dear, oops, I've become a bit too method.
Yeah, I guess it's relatable to method acting. So some of these guys are seeing it as more of a kind of art house experience versus going to the cinema. That's how they see Nordic LARP versus US LARP. So one particular one they mentioned was called Capo from 2011. And this was like a kind of Stanford prison type experiment, which was funded in part by cultural grants from the government and had people acting like prisoners when they came into the scenario. Like they were locked in a cage and tormented by other prisoners. And then
Is this the Stanford prison experiment?
This is the LARP.
Oh, wait, whoa, okay.
Yep. So people signed up to do this, you know, people that had been interviewed beforehand that said, I would never do anything inhumane, I would never be cruel to another person. 36 hours later, they're the ones that are now
torturing
the jailers of the inmates, and they're like borderline waterboarding each other.
Yeah, that is weird. I have heard that the Stanford prison experiment was debunked or not repeatable, but it's nonetheless very evocative.
These guys were going for the LARP version of it. But yeah, they get super dark. They said that players were simulating gang rape in some of this. Crazy Danes.
Okay.
Not in a physical way, no. The way that
that's fine then. That's crack on.
The way that you would rape someone in this LARP scenario was to place your hands on their arms only, like this, hands on arms, and making eye contact with them. Mm-hmm. So that was understood to be that they're doing a rape at you.
This is something that's common in. Sorry, let me rephrase. There's rules relating to this that's common in roleplay games, at least in D&D. Although D&D is run at the dungeon master's discretion of how the game is going to be, but every time I've seen it come up online, someone saying one of the people was having their character do inappropriate stuff in the game, it makes me uncomfortable. All of the advice is you just don't allow that sort of stuff. There's no need to roleplay sexual violence, things like that. So even if it's all Danish and Scandi and gritty noir, sometimes just, you got to draw a line somewhere and say, we're just not going to roleplay that.
Oh, I think that most LARP groups would be that. So the guy they interviewed for Rasted, he still reckoned that 90 to 95% of LARPs in Denmark are traditional kind of sword and sorcery stuff. But these are the guys that are on the fringe. These are the art house LARPists that are making these events where they're aiming for maximum bleed and they want to give someone a psychological experience versus just running around a forest screaming lightning bolt.
So this would be something like
a Serbian film. You're
all playing a role in an improvised, something like a murder mystery game, right? I've done murder mystery dinners, murder mystery games where you're given a character, you're meant to act in character, information is revealed throughout the course of the event, and you draw conclusions or do other actions.
I think that they would look down on your dinner party experience as pussy shit. I think that's the Danish for it.
Pussy shit.
These guys are trying to mess you up. But this is the equivalent of showing someone a Serbian film or Hostel or something like that. You know, there's no real need for it to exist, and no one wants all of that stuff in their normal films.
Yeah, for some reason, popular films.
Yep. Okay. The bit I did like about what they describe as Nordic LARP is that there are fewer rules, or the rules are more elemental. They said more Darwinian.
Darwinian. That's not the adjective I was expecting.
So this is from roadsandkingdoms.com, and the guy's talking about his friend Rasted, who is kind of describing their LARPing groups. And I think it was like 24 church kids that they had in a field having one of this kind of more normal LARPs and stuff. But they're talking about, this is Nordic LARP, right? If you want to be good, you have to be good, says Rasted. If you're fat, you're fat. Rast is a fierce fighter in combat LARPs, one imagines, because he's bigger and stronger than most. I saw one of his colleague, Jonas Vandel, slay about 24 middle schoolers in 5 minutes because he was older, more aggressive, and faster with his sword.
This just sounds like bullying children with extra steps.
It teaches them that life isn't fair.
This is meant to be more fair than life. Yeah, that's interesting.
Few elements to it, but if we wanted to briefly talk about the actual dark sides of LARP, I think it's more or less summed up in this video from YouTuber LARP Mix, the one that he titled "What Parents Need to Know: The Dark Side of LARP." And he's a heavy-set American bearded guy who's been into LARP for ages. He helps organize it. He takes part in them. You know, this is kind of his world. But he still felt that it was a good idea. And it's like a talk that he was doing for parents at an organized, like almost like a small Comic-Con event or a LARP-based event, just to let them know what it's more about. Because he said that LARP used to be different. There used to be more adult oversight. People had to be at least 16 to play. And in his view, that this is kind of wrong, that you're seeing a much younger crowd come in, like kids as young as 8 are basically being dropped off at the edge of the field by their parents and told to go and have a good time or something like that.
Low effort childcare.
They reckon, or he reckons, that, you know, adults shouldn't be hitting kids with sticks. More or less what you said. You know, it's not fair. It's not really great because they're going to process that differently. You might actually physically hurt them, even if it's just a buff or whatever.
Yeah, being blasted by an adult with a foam sword, getting walloped with it, doesn't sound like mercilessly walloped. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't know.
Congratulations, Jonas. You're the big man. You've managed to slay a bunch of actual children. Do you feel good now? Welcome.
This guy, he does talk about some of the bullying and gatekeeping and elitism that we talked about earlier, but they've got a special term in LARPing for people that are problematic in the game, let's say, who aren't necessarily doing anything to break the rules of the LARP, but as a group, they would kind of steer new players or younger players away from that person. He called them a missing stair, and others have referred to it as a broken stair.
A broken stair? As in a stair that you walk up?
I guess so. Missing stair or broken stair. Or I wondered if it was because they're staring creepily at children. Not sure. I didn't get fully into the etymology of that.
Nice.
But he did touch upon the fact that your missing stairs may in fact be grooming the younger players, not necessarily as paedophiles or for some paedophilic purposes.
Hang on. Wait, you've dropped the P word. Where'd that come from? Why are we talking about pedos?
That's what he's saying is like one of the risks and what he thinks parents should be aware of and know when you're letting your kids go to a LARP, that sometimes there are problematic people there who might be fine to LARP with if you are an older person. But as soon as kids get dropped into the mix, he's like, I don't know about this.
Right, I see. Because so much of it involves the interactions of the other participants, that you've got children and adults in the mix together in potentially emotionally vulnerable moments or emotionally intense moments. And you've got a whole bunch of adults interacting with kids that don't have criminal background checks, don't have any necessarily skills with children, etc. It's not like they're being dropped at daycare. You're throwing them on the mercy of a bunch of adults, which on average may be slightly less socially competent.
Yep. That might be creepy Larry, Oh, hey, you're new here, right? You haven't played before. Oh, don't worry, I'll show you how it works. Oh, no, it's okay. You can borrow my cloak. You can come under my cloak with me.
And at the big festivals, they have tribes that they go and like these safe zones. This is the silver group lives in this castle, and we all retire here in the evening for our
mead and hog's meat.
For our mead and meat and fine wines. Whatever it is they have.
I mean, he doesn't say that it's
Old Toby, the finest pipeweed in all the Shire. Carry on.
He doesn't say that every broken stair is necessarily a pedo. He also talks about grooming for other things, like it might be neo-Nazi groups, or what's the other one he mentioned that seemed like a bit out there, but religious groups. They might be trying to indoctrinate you into some kind of dodgy church, but
through the sexy world of LARP.
I think it's quite fair of someone who is a LARPer to kind of throw some shade on their own community and say, hey, you need to watch your kids because we're just here to hit each other with sticks and drink beer, but someone else might not be.
I'm not here to look after your children.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. What other dark sides did you find?
I think that's probably it. I guess bleed can be potentially more damaging than it might sound. It's beyond just kind of idly dreaming back to your summer days at camp, but if there's something there that really affected you in a storyline or how someone behaved or a scenario that you were put in, I don't know, if you were a massive arachnophobe and for 2 hours you were supposed to be exploring a giant spider's cave, that might fuck you up a bit when you go home. You might think about it.
Yeah. I agree with bleed. I didn't have that name for it, but that's the main downsides you can see. There's also, if you're wanting escapism because your life sucks, you can become a bit dependent on the escape and not invest enough in the life. And this is something that's fun, but it's like so many hobbies. It's a time sink with limited real world return on investment. It's cool, but if you're using it to fill a void in your life, that void's what am I saying?
That you shouldn't necessarily equate the emotional and social relationships that you form at a LARP. You shouldn't substitute those for your real world interactions.
Yes.
If anything, exactly, you should kind of carry the lessons from that with you. Maybe
to
be
apply
a bit
to real
braver.
life. Yeah. Thank you for eloquently putting that. I think that's exactly it. And it's like most things when taken to extremes, like too much time on video games. Sure, it's engaging and there's skill progression and even a social aspect to it sometimes, but real world payoff, not so much. So that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It just means weight it accordingly. Don't let it take over your life. The real world still matters.
Don't necessarily let it become your identity. Hey, that's the LARP guy. I mean, a bit like your Robot Wars thing, right? There's some people that community becomes all there is for them, and they find it very difficult to tear themselves away from it.
It's all consuming for many.
Yeah, their identity is now tied up in the thing.
Yeah.
There was, although, one kind of inspirational and nice story that the organizers of Otherworld, that's the kind of long weekend, each one is different, annual event that one of the articles was based on. They said that the reason they started making them bigger and more often was that some lady came along to one of their events. She had a crappy-ish normal life outside of the LARP, as she wrote to them later, that she had kind of a dead-end job and a boyfriend who was a bum and didn't treat her very nice. She went on this weekend, wasn't quite, like walkabout levels of self-discovery that was there, but, forming different social connections. I think her scenario was that at some point in the course of the story, she had an idea about how to solve a problem. And whereas in her real life, she would have struggled to get that across or to have people listen to her, because she felt more comfortable in this group that she'd formed over the previous day or so, she stood up and told a large group her idea, and they went forward with it. It worked, and that was part of the story campaign was successful, but it was kind of life-changing for her.
Satisfaction and status ensued.
And not necessarily like, oh, cool, I'm the king of this LARP now, this is my whole thing. But she then, had a bit more confidence when she left. She wrote to them because she wanted to tell them that she'd become slightly better at speaking in public, which had helped her get a better job. She realized the boyfriend was a piece of trash, kicked him out, this kind of thing. So,
wow, truly life-changing.
You can take positive things away from an experience like that, or you could get sucked into it.
I think the positive sides, just to go over them, exactly as you said, it builds confidence, it improves social skills, it can create real friendships, and it also can fill a longing for status where you can matter, and a story where your actions matter, which is so hard to come by in the real world. There's a community that you can belong to, and there's an identity that you can have, even if just for a little bit. And I think these are all positive things.
Well said. It's true. One of the comparisons that I think it was the Czech article made was that you can go to the movies and you can watch something, and there might be a feel-good moment where you kind of rally behind the hero and someone gets a non-sexual happy ending out of it, a sense of fulfillment. But going to a LARP, you're part of the story, and you kind of are the hero. I mean, not in maybe in a big field battle where you're going to get smashed in the head with a foam sword and you're down straight away, but
at the very least, you can be the hero of your own story.
It's like audience interaction taken to the next level, but rather than being railed by a comedian for being overweight or something, this is a bit more of an uplifting experience.
Yeah, immersive in that way. So, is it sexual? Is it a sexy subculture?
Doth this be sexual?
Is it sexual?
Ooh, my ASMR is triggered.
Sorry.
So about 30 seconds before we started this, I Googled, is LARP sexual? And there are LARPs that have areas.
A bit of light romance roleplay.
Cordoned off for coupling, let's say. That's going to wildly vary event to event. And I'm fairly sure if we looked hard and went down 5 entries in Google rather than 3, then we would find people that have set up sexual LARPs. But as I said, it's a bit of an umbrella term. I don't think that on the whole, people are not in this for the sexies.
I would agree. I think baked in, there's sometimes a bit of light romance roleplay, but on the whole, not really. And of course, real life relationships can form and disappear in this context. But yeah, I don't think it's a sexually motivated subculture at all, really.
That's probably a good way to sum it up, that the subculture itself isn't sexually motivated, where we could look at some other ones which you can't separate the sex from this. This is going back to the whole
furries.
You can take it away. Any group of people you get together, doesn't matter what the topic, some of them will be fucking.
Yep.
And someone will be into it.
Yep.
But inherently as a subculture, no, I don't think so.
So would you be into it?
I guess the other thing I wanted to maybe think about on that is it's a bit like a summer fling or a camp romance, that Birmingham camp that we were at for 5 days or something. You might have seen a pretty girl and you might have been all about following her around for 5 days, but you're potentially never going to see her again.
Certainly when you're a kid and you've got no agency of your life.
Yeah. I reckon there's probably a degree of that in LARP where these interpersonal relationships are formed very quickly and they feel more intense than they necessarily are because you're living out a kind of extreme scenario.
A brief festival romance in a temporary dimension.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to collapse at the end of the week. There's a beauty in that ephemeral nature, I think.
Beauty in the heartbreak.
Poignant heartbreak, yeah. The tragedy of knowing this romance is going to come to an end. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Would you be into it?
Would I be into it? I guess this rolls into, did my opinion change from starting the research? Because I, maybe like yourself, thought this is the geeks of the geeks. And if we look at the example from films and stuff, that doesn't appeal to me, where you've got an elitist group of absolute nerds being like, oh, this is my kingdom. But actually doing a bit more, understanding a bit more and seeing how widely available it is and the different themes that are, the number of people that are potentially into it, the different sets of rules. I think that there could be a space in LARPing that I would enjoy or fit into. Probably the biggest putter offer would be, I don't have the time for it.
I thought you were going to say the other people. Is there a way I can experience this on my own? No, afraid not.
That's not true. Time. You get 2 good-looking socks, you could have a good time. One's a wizard, the other's a bar wench.
It doesn't necessarily take up a huge amount of time. Maybe preparing the costumes, a weekend events here and there. Yeah, time is precious.
That would be the way to, I don't know, maximize your enjoyment out of it. From the looks of it would be you'd want to kind of be into designing the costume and have your own thing and have your character or an idea of your character before you go there to take part in the whole experience. And even to say, right, I'm going to spend the whole weekend at this event or, the whole of a Saturday. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
How about you?
I'm more into it after...
Do you ever go? Would you ever go, mate? Would you ever go on that?
Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
Sorry.
I would have a go if I thought it was hard enough, which I am.
But what about LARPing?
Oh, I'm definitely more interested in this, having done research on it than I had been before and seeing videos about it. One point I thought was interesting is this subculture doesn't really have much of an online presence. There aren't LARPing influencers in the same way that I saw. Because it's a physical, performative, immersive, real-life thing. It just doesn't translate well to video. Yeah, okay, sure, there's people kind of doing this content, but it doesn't take off in the same way that it does for other subcultures, I think.
I don't think we're going to find LARP influencers in the same scale that we're going to see something like Red Pillars or conspiracy theorists or something. But I reckon you wouldn't run out of YouTube videos on LARPing to watch.
True, but how many people are watching them?
It's not the point. It's there.
That is the point. It's not popular. People are uploading it, but it's not getting a lot of
okay.
traction.
I see. I think that this is another thing that is entirely benefiting from the internet being there because it's much easier to organize a big group of people when you don't have to do it by phone,
fucking pigeon,
message in the paper, radio advert saying come to the forest at this time, bring your bofferiest boffer.
Arcane ritual.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I think it has potential to be wholesome. I think use it wisely, don't let it take over your life. Enjoy it for what it is. And yeah, sounds like a pretty good way to spend some time. If I was 20 and you're asking me that, I'd say it's the cringiest thing ever. Despite also playing D&D, I still violently look down on LARPing, but I'm a lot more...
We've come full circle,
chill about it. Yeah.
They're lower in the nerd social hierarchy than D&D players. But yeah, I think that I would agree with what you said. Like a lot of things, it's about the group that you're in. I mean, if you could get a particularly toxic furry group, you wouldn't have fun with it. But think for yourself as well. You have to understand that this is a game. Some people are going to take it far too seriously. Some people in that space might be toxic. You need to understand that when other people are involved in any kind of group dynamic, there's potential for hurt feelings at the least, but there's also potential for you to have a good time and discover something new and fun. And this seemed like a surprisingly wholesome and potentially inclusive crowd of people that not many people would understand from the outset, just sort of gazing in. But once you scratch the surface, could be quite a laugh.
Well said.
You know what else is quite a laugh?
Smash that subscribe button.
Yes, exactly. That's what else. That's what else is a laugh. Us.
Yeah.
So do gently, gingerly tap your tip
of your finger
to the subscribe button.
We don't want to get sued.
I don't care. It's your device. You press whatever you like against it. Come and join us on the socials. You can find us on X at Sub-Subculture, Instagram at Sub-Subculture Podcast, or our Reddit page, our Sub-Subculture Podcast. Leave us comments, your suggestions for episode topics. Leave us your pictures of you in full LARP getup if you want. I'll give you a thumbs up in your picture, nothing else.
Thumbs up your what?
Right up the LARP. And yeah.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you for joining us on this particular costumed meander. Next time, what have we got for you? What do we have for everyone next time, Joe?
Great question. We have...
Oh no.
Drag queens.
Drag queens. From one type of costume to another. LARP to drag queens. What a leap.
It's basically the same thing, I'd imagine.
Will be when I get involved. Dragonella, the bimbo, who also has a tail and scales.
A fairy queen drag LARP.
A scaly drag LARPer.
let's wrap this up.
It's enough fantasy now. Thank you for joining us. Come back next time. Listen to the back catalogue. Enjoy your life. Think for yourself.
Obey my dog.